Welcome to the REI Diamond Interview, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom with Dan Breslin.
Welcome to the REI Diamond Show with Bearj, Jehanian on how to break down the wall to your success zone. I'm Dan Breslin, host of the REI Diamond Show, and each week I normally invite a real estate industry professional, but this week we're going to take a slight departure from our regular programming, spend some time talking about high performance, mindset, success, and how that affects specifically real estate investors, whether that's somebody just getting started or whether somebody who's been in the business for a while. If anybody has been listening to the show for a while or knows me personally, people know that I'm always seeking out, the highest performers. I'm studying the mindset of successful people. And I'm not just talking about, the people we have on the show and in the real estate niche, but broad range of everything from sports psychology to health and fitness to other areas and aspects of business to just people who've done great things with their life. So this week I've invited Bearj on, and he is a high performance speaker and trainer, and he also comes from a real estate background. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Bearj.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I'm really pumped up and excited to be here. I've heard a whole lot about your show. I've been checking you out, and you've got just an amazing thing going on, and I'm really excited to offer some value to the listeners. I think this is going to be a really interesting show, and you're right, it is a departure probably from what you usually do, but you said something at the beginning that I really liked, and you used the term high performance, and that's what this is all about. If you want to be successful in life, you need to learn how to be a high performer. So I'm really excited to talk about that today. Thanks for having me on.
So let's get a little bit of a, origination, kind of where you came from, how you got where you are, and what you're doing today, just so our listeners can get a feel for, where you came from and who you are.
Absolutely. I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and I became a school teacher. In fact, specifically, I was a high school band director not too far from where I grew up, and I did that for about 13 or 14 years. And towards the end of that, I started to get restless. And I wanted to do something else. I wanted to expand my life. I wanted to expand my skill set. I wanted to expand my reach. And my sister in the early 2000s, for my birthday, gave me Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If there's anyone on this call who has not read that book yet, you need to pause the recording you're listening to right now and go read that book and then come back. But she gave me that book. I read it, and my brain almost exploded in my head with possibilities, and I had never thought of money in the way that he outlined and described it then. So from that point on, I started to research how money works, because I always thought of money as you go to a job, you get paid, and you go home. And you go to the job again, get paid, and go home. It was a really finite view of how money worked. But when I realized you could leverage yourself and leverage your money to grow more money and make your money work for you, I started to research it. And for about 6 or 7 years, I did that until in the mid to late 2000s when my mom got ill. She got lung cancer and eventually passed away. And that time I realized life ends. We all know that, but when it becomes real to you, there's a switch that happens in your mind. And I realized that I needed to start to take action if I wanted to change what I had in life, who I was in life, and the reach that I had in life. So I decided to take a real estate investing course. In fact, I did it about a week before my mom passed away. And my sisters got that, I needed to go and do this. And I took a weekend and I took a real estate investing course. And for that next year, I studied, I started to meet with realtors, and I eventually purchased my first home in Philadelphia. And then I purchased a few months later my second home in Philadelphia. Both are buy and hold. I have tenants in both of them. I had struggles with both of them, but I kept pushing forward. And eventually I decided what I really wanted to do was to become a speaker. I'd been inspired by someone I heard in my late 20s. And through this whole investing mindset thing that was happening to me, I started to see other things, and it brought me to another place in my life where I knew specifically why I was here, which was to be a motivational speaker, to be a trainer, and to help other people to reach new heights, to help other people to become high performers and improve their mindset and their skill set and help them to be successful people. So about 2+ years ago, I left my comfortable job and stepped into the crazy world of being an entrepreneur with no net basically, but having my life in my control. And that's what I've been working on for the past several years, is building myself as a different person from where I was before. And it's an exciting place to be. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are in that place, and some of them want to be in that place. And that's what this call is about today. I can teach you the skills you need to have so that you can make that transformation for yourself.
This is interesting. I know we're going to talk about a couple of the points and, the exact steps to get some of that done. But before we do, I kind of want to point out, I was lucky in my quote unquote transformation or life change or my entry into real estate. It seemed like it was my passion. And looking back over the years of my life, Bearj, I remember as a kid, my dad flipping houses, and my grandpa, before he passed, he was like a real estate property manager. And neither of them were like setting the world on fire, but it certainly did plant the dream in my mind at an early age. And so now looking back, it seems natural that at the age of 26, I would have found it. But I didn't have to walk away from a steady job. I didn't have, I had been in car sales, and I had been an electrician, and I had tons of different jobs, laboring jobs, and been at every car dealership selling cars, working at various jobs. So I never really had a career for 12 or 13 years like you had to walk away from. Do you think we could talk about, like for me, real estate, I came into it, it sounded great. I learned as much as I could, and then I started putting deals together profitably pretty quick, and it was like the one thing I found where I was successful, and it seemed to come relatively, I don't want to say easily, because it was certainly like a long 6, 7, 8 months until I got the first deal done, but it seemed to come almost naturally to me at that time. And it was like, oh, this is working. Why not do a lot more of just this? So I didn't have that decision to have to let go of something that was working for 12 or 13 years, that was paying the mortgage, that was paying the bills, that I get up and I go to work every day. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who have full-time jobs, or maybe they have struggled with that decision and then let go of that old identity to embrace the new one. Do you think you could kind of touch on some of the emotions and some of the process of coming to that decision in a mature fashion and then setting up a point to take action on for us?
Absolutely. For me, just to get a little bit more clarity, I was a high school band director for about 13 or 14 years. And then after that, I was an elementary school band director for another 15 years. So it was actually 28 years in a really comfortable place where, like you said, I had this job that paid me every couple of weeks, and it paid my mortgage, it paid all my bills, and I didn't have to worry about things. I was building up a nice lump sum for retirement. I had a pension to look forward to. And I got to the point where what I wanted was so much stronger than the fears that I would encounter to get there. And I think that's the biggest hurdle for people to get to. What I really mean by that, and the easy way to say it is, my why was much stronger than my why not. And that's the point that I came to. That's what happened to me when I got to the point where I need to do this. I need to become a speaker. I need to go after the things that I have wanted to do for a long time, the things that were my passion in life, the things that I believe that I was put here on earth to do. When that became strong enough to overcome the other issues, when I knew that I would hit financial hurdles, I knew that I would hit emotional hurdles, I knew that I would hit business hurdles. When that why became strong enough, that those hurdles seemed small to me, that they seemed surmountable, not insurmountable, that I would be able to get past them, around them, over them, through them, under them, whatever I needed to do, I could get past them. I could break down the wall and get into that place where I would be successful. That's when I was able to make that shift. So I guess what I'm saying is, if there are people who want to make that shift, there's got to be one of two things happening. Either your why has to be much stronger than your why not, or you've got to know exactly what you want to do, and you've got to have that path set out for yourself. You've got to have a vision for yourself of exactly where you want to go and how you're going to get there. A lot like going on a vacation, Dan. When we go on a vacation, we spend some time planning that out. We figure where we want to go. We know exactly the location, the exact hotel. We know exactly when we're going to get there, and then we back ourselves out of it. Well, here's what we want to do while we're there. And because of that, this is a flight we want to take. We want to get there at a certain time. We figure out our expenditures, and then we eventually take off the time from work, and we go on that vacation and come back pretty much having the experience that we expected to have. When we apply that to our lives in the business world, the investing world, then you start to have that same kind of success. So you've got to make sure your why is bigger than your why not, and you've got to have your plan in place if you want to get there.
So I have a little bit of a story to share, I guess, when I had the why. So I came into the business 2006. As you're talking about this, and I'm thinking, well, why do I do this, and why did I get into it? And back then it was like, well, I had to pay my bills and I had to experience life. And, it was kind of like money driven. I wanted to make more money. And then maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I remember reading the 4-Hour Work Week, and I've mentioned that many times on this show. Tim Ferriss is a fan. I'm a fan of Tim Ferriss. I still check his stuff out on a regular basis. But the 4-Hour Work Week kind of planted the seed that turned into my vision. And my why, when I was living in the Philadelphia area, all my life born and raised, my daughter was living in Chicago. So I would have to hop on a plane when she was really young. And then there was like a big milestone when I think she was 5 or 6 years old and she could finally fly herself, which meant I could afford at least double the amount of weekends. So it'd be like one weekend a month or less that I could see my daughter. For a long time, the same way you talk about that vision and that desire growing inside of you, Bearj, to become a speaker, like for me, she was, all of a sudden she was 10 years old and she was 11. And when the market crashed, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have, things crumbled when the market crashed, but I kind of stubbornly held on and this was the only thing I knew, like I just mentioned. But I remember reading the 4-Hour Work Week. It planted the seed for my why to become something that was possible. And I was like, wow, I could potentially move to Chicago and be a real dad. I could do that with some of the principles and the business systems and the strategies, and was able to build out that plan and that vision to get there. And all of a sudden, why I was doing that and why I was reaching and building for more and more levels or more and more volume, higher levels of success in my business niche that I do, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about building the team and systems so that I could run most of the activity in my market in Philadelphia from Chicago, which as I record this, I'm staring out my window at Lake Michigan, and I'm living that life. My daughter's 14 now. I've been here for a year and a half. So, all of a sudden, like you said, those hurdles seem small. I mean, it was like the hurdles just disappeared. All of a sudden, I moved away, and I was on one hand, my fear that you talked about, what I wanted was to be a father for my daughter, and all of a sudden that was much stronger than my fear of what if the whole business in Philadelphia collapses and I don't know anyone in Chicago, and basically I go broke and I'm stuck. And when I came out to Chicago, my business multiplied in Philadelphia, and then I established, relationships and was able to build a successful business here in Chicago as well. So I really felt like I needed to share that little piece because it's sort of lined up with exactly what you're saying. And I don't know that I could have told you from the beginning or told myself or told anyone and articulated how to have that vision, or I would try to answer that question. Well, what is my why? And I would come up with all these, have to have $1 million kind of net worth, the stuff you hear a lot of newer real estate investors saying in the beginning, and the real why, that strong why, seemed to develop over time. Did you have some insights or maybe a few points on sort of building up to that stuff and how that would be applied for somebody who maybe hasn't made that shift, or maybe they want to make a secondary shift, or maybe they're thinking there's maybe an even bigger why than just where I'm at today?
Absolutely. The previous 15 to 20 years before I decided to leave my job, I had this hunger and desire inside of me to become a speaker. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I did it with my students. I actually considered myself to be more of a success coach with my students. And I used music. I was a high school band director, as I said. I used music as the vehicle to teach my students how to be successful and to aspire to higher things. Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was teaching elementary school, the gentleman whose office was next door to mine, we used to have lunch together once in a while. And one day he said to me out of the blue, Bearj, you should be a motivational speaker. And Dan, it shook me to the core. The hairs on the back of my neck neck stood up. The hairs on my knuckles and fingers stood up. I couldn't believe he said that to me because that was my lifelong dream. But I had never believed I could actually accomplish it. I didn't know how to. So because I didn't know how and I didn't know the steps to take, I thought I could never do it. But he said something to me that day that changed everything. He said, I want you to come and speak for me. You see, he also taught night classes at Strayer University. And he said, I want you to come speak at Strayer to my students. No one had ever asked me to do that before. I wasn't sure if I could or not, but I thought, you better go do this or you're never, ever going to achieve what you really want in life. And it was my chance. So I went and I spoke, and he introduced me to his class as a motivational speaker. And it felt kind of clunky to me. It felt uncomfortable to be introduced that way. It felt made up. But I went into that room and I spoke. In fact, I tried to prepare for it for about 2 weeks, writing different things down, writing together a talk, and I kept tearing everything up. Nothing seemed to work until that day when I sat outside in my car before I went into that school, and I said to myself, Bearj, you have been doing this for 20 years already. You already know how to do this. Just go in and do what you've always done naturally. And I went in, he introduced me as a motivational speaker, and I spoke for about 40 minutes to the class, and I couldn't believe that I was able to do that. And the class received it really well. He told me how they talked about that class many times over the course of the rest of the semester, and he invited me back a few more times. And at that point, I realized the only thing that was keeping me from what I really wanted to do was me. It was the things I was telling myself. And we all tell ourselves ridiculous lies about who we are. But when we change that and we shift in our mind, make that shift in our mind about who we are and who we can be, that's when life changes for us. You see, most people have a pretty poor view of themselves. What they don't realize is what's holding them back is not who they are. What holds them back is who they think they are not. We all have, as Les Brown says, greatness within us. And when we embrace that and when we go after that, when we go after that, embrace that greatness and pursue it and believe that we have that within us, believe that we have something more to offer our families, our friends, our coworkers, our business partners, our business associates, when we believe we have something more to offer to other people, that's when we can step into that greatness that we have within us. And the first step to do that is by cleaning up the toxic self-talk that we give ourselves every day. The things that we don't want. We talk about, I don't want to not be able to pay my bills. I don't want to run out of money. I don't want to not have a place to live. I don't want to not be able to provide for my family. Those are all negative ways of looking at things. And I'm sure when you were making that shift to move to Chicago, you had all those same thoughts going through your mind. I had those same thoughts going through my mind when I made this shift to be a speaker. And I had those same thoughts going through my mind in the mid-2000s when I started to purchase real estate. I don't want to go broke doing this. I was afraid. But when you talk about things in that way to yourself, even if it's silent, your brain doesn't understand the negative. What it understands is go broke. It doesn't understand the don't go broke. It understands go broke. What you focus on is what you get. If you're driving down the road and you're focusing on a wall and you're saying, I don't want to hit that wall, and you're looking at that wall, you're going to hit the wall. That may be an extreme example, but that's a little bit about how our mind focuses on things. It focuses on the thing, the subject, not the positive or negative. So what you want to do is switch that around and focus on what you do want. I want to own real estate. I want to have this many properties. I want to carve out the path for how I'm going to do it. I want to meet the proper people who will be able to be in my circle of influence to help me. I want to put great people on my team. I want to have people who are smarter than me be a part of my group. I want to be in masterminds that will help me to be a better person and elevate me. I want to be around people who are wealthy and successful. When you talk in those veins and you get that type of mindset, that's the first step towards success. That's the first step you can take to get the right direction in your life so that you can then pursue what you really want, what your dreams are and what your vision is. But you've got to set that path for yourself. You've got to set the direction for yourself. And it's the opposite direction from what most of us really are on a path toward.
I remember having somebody on the show a while back, and it was a gentleman that in a conversation years before, so maybe 3-4 years ago, we were having a conversation, probably 2012, 13, somewhere in that time frame. And I was clawing my way back from the market crash. And I remember he said something to me, and I thought, how did he have the audacity to even think that? And what he said was, yeah, so I decided I was going to be the best wholesaler in Philadelphia. And I was like, wow. The audacity to even think that. That was like from my mindset, my limited belief system, right? It was like, that's nuts. And then, that stuck in my mind. I said, okay, fine. Then I'm going to be the best too, even better, I guess, because there can only be one the best. And like what that does is bring us out a different level of performance. At least it did for me. Are there any other things that we could do potentially, specific action items to change your mind, your identity, your self-talk, or even clean up the self-talk that you kind of suggest for the listeners?
Absolutely. There's something that I like to share with people that's a really simple thing to do. I will tell you right now, it's very easy to do. It's also very easy not to do. It's kind of like going on a diet. The first day you eat healthy and you have a salad and you don't eat poorly, you don't have French fries and you stay away from carbs, it really doesn't change much for you. Even if you do that for a week. And for some people, it may be 2 or 3 weeks and you don't really see much of a change because we've put our body into a certain state physically. And because of that, it takes a while to make that transformation for your body to start changing how it processes things. And over time, you start to see small impacts of change in your body, and you start to lose that weight, and you start to gain that muscle back because you're exercising and following something on a daily routine day after day after day. Likewise, if you are on a healthy diet and you have ice cream one time, that's not going to change things much either. But if you do that over time, that starts to cause issues for yourself as well. The same thing for your mindset, the same thing for who you believe about who you are. You've got to change it slowly. We can't make that shift overnight. It just doesn't happen that way. Nothing in life happens that way unless you win the lottery. And crazily enough, if you win the lottery and you're not emotionally and mentally prepared for that, most people lose all that money within a few years. So you've got to prepare yourself. And the easiest thing and the best thing to do is something that I like to call, well, it's not something I like to call, but they're affirmations. And by doing an affirmation each day, in fact, twice a day, you can slowly, just like on a diet, just like feeding yourself the proper healthy food, you can slowly change your mindset. And here's how an affirmation works. Number one, it's got to be in the present tense. You don't want to speak about what you want to have. I will own real estate. I will have funds to, the proper funds to invest. I will meet the right people who, not the will, that's tomorrow. You don't want to speak about tomorrow because we all talk about what we're eventually going to do. Speak in the present tense. I have the proper circle of friends. I have the proper circle of influence. I know influential people. I know people who can lead me to people that I need to meet so I can invest properly. I know how to get the proper instructions. I know the right books to read. I know the right events to go. I have the right mastermind group. I have the right people around me. Speak in the present tense. Speak about who you want to be, but in the present tense. And read it in the morning and read it in the evening. So a really easy sample of an affirmation would be, I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm confident that I can be a strong real estate investor. I know that I am the number one investor in the market that I'm in. I know that I am the person that people come to seek advice. I know when I have a question, I can ask any person in my investment group because there I will find the answers. I know that I have a team around me. I have a strong team in every area of what I do. And that's the type of affirmation you want to have because that builds that confidence. If you read it in the morning, if you read it in the evening, when you wake up, right before you go to bed, little by little, your mindset will shift. Tell yourself, in the present tense, who you really want to be. And little by little, your mind will make that shift. For me, I tend to be a procrastinator. So my affirmations always start with these words: I am a person of action. And it's really fascinating what happens, Dan. If I wake up and I read my affirmations, I run around the house like the Tasmanian devil getting work done. I'm at my computer pounding away at things. I'm making recordings that I need to make. I'm creating content that I need to create. I'm doing everything I need to do. If I don't read it, I slow down. I don't take care of the things I need to take care of. What we tell ourselves, what we think about ourselves is who we become. What you think about, you bring about. We've heard it before, but it is absolutely 100% fact. It's a fact. What you tell yourself about yourself is who you become. And you talked about this person you met that said they were going to be the number one real estate investor, and I think you said Philadelphia area. Well, they became that probably because that's who they believed they were. And someone else who believed they weren't that did not become that. I have a good friend that before I introduce him to people, I always tell them, this guy, whatever he touches, he's got the Midas touch. He turns it to gold. And he does that because he believes he can. He has zero doubt in himself. Whatever he wants to achieve, he achieves because he believes 100% with every cell in his body that he can absolutely achieve it. And the way you have to do that is through a positive mindset. That's the first thing. And I call it building belief in yourself. It's a lot like the roots of a tree. If you've got a small tree, it has a small root system, and that tree won't grow very big if that root system doesn't grow. But if that root system grows deep and strong, that trunk of the tree starts to get bigger and thicker and can hold up a bigger and more robust tree. And the deeper and stronger those roots grow, the bigger and stronger and taller that tree grows. It feeds the tree, it supports the tree, it provides everything that tree needs so it can reach the heights that it wants to reach. But no one goes to see the roots. No one goes to see that. They want to go see the fruits of the labor. But the problem we have today is that we've got this fast food society, right, Dan? People want things right away. They want to go to an investing group, and right away they want to have investments, and they want to be profitable in the black immediately. And life just doesn't work that way. The non-sexy part is the roots. That's the boring part, but that's the part that grows the tree. That's the part that makes you successful. And self-talk is the boring part. It's mundane. In fact, some people might even say it's strange. But if you do it, it will change your life.
One of my friends and guests who was on our show here, Frank Montreux, he's a humongous fan. This is a guy, his nickname is Mr. Deal a Day, and he's put together a team. He does, he has different investors, contractors, a lot of people who are participating, but the essence is they do 300 flips per year that sell somewhere in the $150,000 to $300,000 range, spread all over the south side of Chicago. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Frank's episode as well at reidiamonds.com. But Frank is a humongous fan of the affirmations and reads them every day. And whenever anybody hears Frank and hears that's part of his story, the next thing you know, everybody's writing the affirmations. So, Bearj, the daily routine for you. Let's talk about your daily routine, and then I'll share mine too. You read the affirmations morning and night. Are there any other things throughout the day that you would say that people maybe listening should take for a test drive or consider implementing in their own life if they're reaching for a higher level of performance?
Well, I want to put a plug in for something that I think everyone should do. I don't care who you are. I don't care what level of success you've had in life or who you believe yourself to be. You need to get a coach. And it may be a friend. It may be a paid coach. Get someone who can help you through things, because something my coach taught me, which is invaluable, is when you have a success, write it down. Have a journal where you can document all of your successes. And they may be past successes. They may be successes that are happening in the present. So when you have those moments when you feel like, gosh, I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think I'm the person who can achieve these things. I don't think I have the knowledge. I don't think I have the ability. You can take that journal out, go back, and read your documentation of all your successes that you've had in the past. And that helps to reaffirm yourself and strengthen the belief that you are someone who can achieve great things. So that's a really simple thing that you can keep with you. It's like a small notebook. You can put it in your back pocket. Ladies, you can put it in your pocketbook or a back pocket, however you want to carry it around. And when you have a success, journal it. Write down what it is you just had success at, why you did, and why you think that's a thing that you're successful at and you're good at. Even if it's just a positive interaction with somebody. Maybe you lifted someone else up. Maybe you helped someone else feel great. Maybe you led someone to a great contact that they needed. If you do those things, that's another thing that will keep you on a steady path moving forward. And really, the biggest thing is what you believe about yourself. And you've got to do things all the time, take steps all the time to feed yourself with positive things. And another thing you can do, which is more of a long-term thing, is put positive people around you. You know, Les Brown had a huge influence on me. He was the person that I saw back in the mid-'90s on TV giving a motivational speech. I'd never heard a motivational speech before. I'd never heard of a motivational speaker. I didn't even know what they were. But I saw this guy speaking on PBS, and when I saw him, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. I knew right away, but I didn't know how to get there. And it wasn't until I started to think more positively about myself and take those small steps, those small mundane steps every single day, that I was able to change my mindset and my belief system about who I was and what I was able to achieve. I really believe this. I heard this quote. In fact, you know what? It wasn't even a quote. I saw it on a T-shirt. I was doing one of those workouts you get on DVD, and I saw on this gentleman's T-shirt, it said, "You are kind of a big deal." And it really resonated with me, because the reality is every single person is kind of a big deal. We all have had unique experiences. We've all had unique relationships. We've all looked at different things in a different way from anyone else. There is not one single person who ever was or ever will be or ever is right now that is the same as anyone else. We all have friends that we say, hey, we're kind of like this other person, but not exactly. Every single person here has something very, very unique to offer the world. And just by that alone, just by surviving, you know, if you think about the fact that, you know, there are tens of thousands of sperm that you know want to get fertilized at conception, but only one does. Only one does, and that's you. That's you. You are kind of a big deal. That's incredible with the fact that you made it that far. And just from getting that far, you are unique just from that. But all of your life experiences, all the bad things that happen to you that you've learned from, that you can share and help other people with, and all the great things that have happened that you've learned and you can share with other people and help them, embrace that. Embrace who you are and believe in yourself, because you can be so much more than you believe you can. It's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you are not, because you are kind of a big deal. And every single person listening is kind of a big deal. And every single person that you encounter is a big deal because of the things they've learned, the things they have accomplished, and the things they've been through. So embrace that. And when you embrace that, embrace who you are, then you'll realize that you've got so much more to offer, so much more you can become, so much more you can be. Every single person has that within them.
Yeah, you're right about that. You mentioned something about feeding yourself with positive mindset. I took a note and I said input there. And I remember somebody mentioned it to me a few years back, say, you don't like the voices in your head. Get some new voices in there. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. So how do you get new voices in there? Well, if I'm only watching a certain set of programming on TV, like I don't watch it, but like Law and Order, you're watching murders and rapes all day long on Law and Order, then what's your mindset consist of? Whereas I made a concerted effort 4, 5, 6 years ago to begin reading biographies of people in history, from Lincoln to Ben Franklin to Rockefeller to Andrew Carnegie, you know, Steve Jobs, and really to just do that to increase my belief level in what's impossible. These people are human beings just like me. They breathe the same air. To a degree, there's the same level of opportunity available to every one of us. And, no, maybe it may not be realistic for me to become a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs in my lifetime, but, certainly I can have way more capacity than what I'm currently doing now. I have so much more available to me and so much more space and so much more ability than where I'm operating right now as I get better and better. So I feed myself that positive input through podcasts like this. I check out Bigger Pockets. I buy audio programs I listen to in the car. I buy books on Audible. I'm constantly reading, 4, 5, 6 books on my nightstand. So I've found a way to have a diet of positive information, and I can look back at my life and I can almost pinpoint the day. I can certainly pinpoint the month and year that my life changed as a result of picking up that positive input and that diet. For me, Bearj, my daily routine typically consists of waking up 6:30, 7 a.m. in the morning. I like to eat my breakfast, and then I like to meditate for 10 to 20 minutes. Sometimes there's not enough time to do that, and then I'm off to the gym. I like to electrify my body and my muscles. Typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm working out with the trainer before I come back to my condo and record this episode. I like to get myself charged up for the day and work out as early as possible. That's not an everyday routine. And then I also like to do the meditation at night just to clear my mind. And part of my morning meditation is to not necessarily program my mind with my to-do list. I don't sit there and, just mentally check off over and over and over what I need to do for the day. But I might have 2 or 3 things that are very important that I might want to happen throughout the day. And I'll first calm my mind for 5, 10 minutes, focus on my breathing. And then I'm setting my intention for the day. And I'm anticipating maybe a certain negotiation that I'm in, maybe a certain deal to come through, maybe a certain marketing campaign to produce results, maybe a certain buyer for one of my, flips that I've gotten done. So I have this intention, and I can't pick too many because there's a limited time in a day. But typically, if I can choose 1 or 2 of those things and say, oh, these are very high priority, it will almost appear miraculous, the circumstances that come together throughout that day or the next couple of days. It's oh my gosh, this is seeming to actually have some sort of impact on the randomness of the universe when I set my intention for the day. And I believe that the way that works for me is I'm crystallizing my thoughts and my belief around that thing so that when that opportunity comes, when people say, oh, quote unquote, luck, really that's just me being prepared. I prepared my mindset and the opportunity for that thing comes. So my communication, my thought processes, and my actions are all congruent and produce the best possible result for that thing that I had set my attention in the morning. Does that make sense?
It does, Dan. And, I apologize. I kind of departed from what your question was. I got myself all excited. I broke into a little bit of a sweat.
Got it. Yeah,
right.
2 of them.
You've got to have a routine set for yourself. And real quickly, what I do is when I get up, the first thing I do is I drink some water. I drink two full glasses of water because you've got to rehydrate yourself. And by doing that, that starts to give you some energy. And the next thing I do is I do a little bit of yoga, just about 10 to 15 minutes of yoga. And that serves 2 purposes for me. It stretches my body. It gets my body invigorated because there's a lot of breathing that you do with yoga. And the more air we bring into our bodies, the more energy we have, and the more energy we have for the rest of the day. But it also serves as a time for meditation for me where I can focus and calm my mind and get rid of all the junk that we feed ourselves at the beginning of the day. And then after that, I sit down while I have a breakfast shake, a breakfast energy shake. And while I'm doing that, I'm reading. I charge myself up in my mind. That's the first thing I do in the day. By 8 o'clock, I've already done all of that. By 8 a.m., I've read, I've stretched, I've done a little bit of meditation, I've had my breakfast, and I'm ready to go for the day. And midday is when I do my exercise because I need to get recharged during the middle of the day. And I also quiet myself down a little bit in the middle of the day as well. And then the second half of the day, I have that energy to go back again and accomplish the different tasks and things that I've set out for myself for that day. And if I've got meetings or whatever it is with people, I've got the energy for that. And this is something that I think is really important to do as well. Not everyone can do it to the extent that you or I can because they may have that job still. But when I set up my day, I make sure that I've got block time set up for myself to accomplish big tasks. Many people are texting, they're on Facebook, they're checking emails, they're doing a lot of different things all at the same time. And we believe that we can be multitaskers, but we really can't. There's that shift time that takes place in between moving from one activity to the other and then back again that slows us down. So I shut off my phone, I turn off Facebook, I turn off my email, and I take care of the task at hand. Even if it's just for 30 minutes, I can get so much more accomplished in that 30 minutes than I could if I were trying to do other things at the same time. Sometimes I can do more in 30 minutes than I can do in 2 hours if I quiet everything else in my life down. And the last thing I want to say is a lot of people write down in the evening before they go to bed what their tasks are for the next day. I would say that you might want to try not doing it at that point in the day. And the reason is when you write things down in the evening about what you need to do the next day, now you're thinking about those things and you're not quieting your mind. You're making your mind busy. And it doesn't help to get the best sleep and the best rest. So I like to take those notes throughout the day of what I need to accomplish the next day, or first thing in the morning. If there are a few things that I need to feel through and think through, I write them down then. I tend to not write those things down late at night. You can do it at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, but don't do it at 10 o'clock at night.
That's ironic. Last night, we're stopping a tax sale today. We're buying a property and we have to, haul down to the county by the end of the day or we lose the property with a $25,000 check to pay back the back taxes. That's like one of maybe 5 things that's on my to-do list. And I specifically remember having like multiple dreams about like buying this property and having this like tax like all night long. And I did. I wrote that down at like 10:30 last night as I was going to sleep. So that's a great suggestion. I'm going to try that out. And one of the things too, you mentioned like meditation and quieting the mind. My trainer for exercise, and my trainer told me a story the other day. He says, if you throw a rock into a pond that's disturbed, so the pond has the waves on it, or a lake has the waves on it, you throw a rock in, you can't even notice where the rock went in. But if the pond is completely still and you throw the same rock in, the evidence of that rock entering and breaking the calmness of the water will be seen across the entire pond. And that was told to me as a story of basically like a visual depiction of the differences in your mindset when you meditate and quiet the mind. And one other thing on the meditation, and I'll let us switch gears, is Ray Dalio. He's like a billionaire hedge fund manager, and he's been quoted for saying something along the lines of like one of the one thing that's given him a huge advantage and a huge edge and allowed him to operate like an investing ninja, I believe is how the quote goes, was his daily practice of meditation that he's done. So I figured, hey, if it's working for him, it's working for so many other people in so many different fields, actors, business people. I figured I'd try it myself. And I've noticed the same improvement and my ability to function, especially under high stress situations, like being in the middle of negotiations, dealing with bad news when we have stuff come back, after the flip is done, sold and settled, and, they're threatening us with lawsuits. It makes it a lot easier for me to just deal with that in stride, down to even situations in traffic when I'm able to like calmly avoid accident situations, which in the past, before I had that practice, would have caused an eruption, honking the horn, hollering and screaming, even though the windows are up, and like a complete overreaction, even though I was able to still avoid that accident. Now I'm able to do that and calmly steer through, the dangerous situation without that reaction. And so like that calm and peace of mind for me has just been great. And that's even, I've even seen that effect, Bearj, with a 4 or 5 minute meditation when that's all I could manage to sit still for was, 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And I could still see that difference in my mindset and my ability throughout that day.
Dan, it's really interesting because meditation isn't something I did in my even recent past. It's something that I've begun to make a part of my life. And it's really changed who I am. And like you said, it makes you a calmer, more level-headed, focused person. I really love that example of the rock in the pond. I've never heard that before, but that makes so much sense. It gives you real clarity, and it shows the clarity that you can get when you've got that calmness of mind. There's one other thing that I did that really changed who I was. And it was a very, very simple thing that anybody can do, and it doesn't take any time. In fact, it gives you time back in your life. 2.5 years ago, I made the conscious decision to turn off the news. I literally just turned off the news. I used to wake up, the first thing I did, I turned on the news. That was my company while I was getting ready for work, getting dressed, preparing for the day, and I listened to some news in the car, and it was all negative. And every day I would begin the day with this pit in my stomach from the news. And when I turned the news off, it was like a switch turned in my life. It didn't take more than a week for me to notice that I was a more positive, easygoing, and happy person. It was an amazing, amazing revelation that I had. And I've met a lot of people who have done the same thing. I've met some people who I've told that I've done it and have turned off the news and said that they were much better for it. And I've met a lot of people who can't understand how I could possibly turn off the news, but I can't understand how they can possibly spend so much time watching it. That was a simple thing that I did that really changed my mindset.
Yeah, it breaks my heart when I go visit my mom and she's got the news on and I'm like, oh, I got to like hear it in the background and I can't like turn it off there.
Yeah.
That's a great action item though.
It is. And it's a simple one. It's a simple one, but most people won't take that step. And when I was a school teacher, I would give my students, I said, look, I'm going to show you something you can do to make you the top performer in this class. And when I say class, like in your grade level, you'll be the top performer. I'll show you exactly what you need to do. And I'd ask them, who wants to be a top performer? And they'd all raise their hands. But then I would tell them, the reality is that only 1 or 2 of you will ever achieve it. And it's not because you're not good enough. It's because you won't take the steps necessary to do what you want to do, to be a top performer. You won't consistently take those steps day after day after day after day because in the beginning it's exciting, but after a while life gets in the way and those steps become boring and mundane and we don't follow them. So maybe you'll meditate for a day or so and you'll say, well, this doesn't really work. I don't have time. So you stop. You don't see the immediate results. We're a fast food society. But that's not how life works. Fast food is bad for you, right? Anything that takes a while to achieve is always good for you. Anything that takes a while to cook and prepare is always something that's good. Fast food has junk in it. Anything like that is bad for you. So things that are good take time. It takes time to develop those skills. It takes time to develop that mindset. And when you keep after it day after day after day, that's when you start to see those changes. And you mentioned something about reading. I am a huge proponent of personal and self-development. And if you aren't reading, you need to begin reading. If you don't have the time to read, listen to audios. You mentioned audible.com. I have that on my phone. I listen to it in my car all the time. I consider my car to be a rolling university. You want to feed your mind the same way you feed your body, as I mentioned earlier. And there are experiences and knowledge that other people have that we don't have the time to go and experience and gain. But we can learn from them in a few hours by listening to books or by reading books or by watching videos on YouTube. If you can't afford books and if you can't afford audios, there's a ton of free material all over YouTube. Go to the local library and take a book out. Go to meetup.com and find mastermind groups and become a part of those. And you'll start to feed your mind with the positive things and the right information to build your mindset so that you have that suit of armor so that when things go wrong, you're able to stand up to it. And that's kind of the next thing I want to talk about because, Dan, you mentioned a couple things going wrong with your real estate business. Some things went wrong in my real estate business. And I think it would be an easy bet that there's nobody who's ever been an investor that has not had something go sour. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, it's got to be the truth.
Yeah, 100% the truth. So here's the difference between the successful investor and the unsuccessful investor. The successful investor, I'll tell you about them first. They expect problems and they prepare themselves for those problems. So when those problems crop up, they're ready to deal with it. They have got a team in place. They've got knowledge in place. They know where to go to get the answers. and they're ready to tackle the issue and get past it. And they see it as a bump in the road, not a stopping point. The unsuccessful investor will see that issue. They won't prepare for it. They won't anticipate it. They'll dread it. They'll fear it, but they won't anticipate it. So they won't put anything in place to deal with it. And when it happens, they'll say, see, I knew that would happen. I'm getting out of this. This isn't the place. It doesn't work. It's not for me. I'm not the kind of person who can be successful at this. This is a bunch of malarkey. It's really not what people bring it up to be. And it really is, but you've just got to prepare yourself for those events in life. Just like, you go for a bike ride and you fall and break a leg. Those things happen. You don't stop riding a bike ever because of that. You had a mishap, your leg heals, you get past it, you get back on the bike, and you move forward. And you've got to have the same mindset when you invest. Expect those issues and prepare yourself for it ahead of time. Prepare yourself with knowledge, skill set with your mind, so that your mind and you're ready with that suit of armor where you can tackle it, and prepare yourself with the knowledge and skill set in investing, and having that circle of people around you with that team that will help you to move forward.
Yeah, being prepared. I think my time in the Boy Scouts helped me out with that. Thank God, thank Mom.
That's right.
Well, cool. We're approaching the top of the hour here, Bearj. I have a ton of notes written down here. Did you have any final points you wanted to make before I get to our wrap-up round of questions here?
I do. I heard something about a month and a half, 2 months ago. I went to this event out in San Diego, and the gentleman on stage said, embrace the struggle. Embrace it. Rather than fear it, rather than dread it, embrace the struggle. Because that's the thing that's going to happen over time that is going to give you the story. That's the thing that is going to help you to become who you want to be. That's the thing that is going to mold you into who you are. It's the journey. It's the incredible events that happen along the way that when you look back and you say, gosh, remember when we bought that home and everything went wrong and we thought we'd never get past it, but then because of the things that happened, we met some other people who helped us, and they led us to these other incredible successes. We would have never met them had we not gone through that struggle to begin with. So embrace the struggle because it brings you to new places. It creates that suit of armor around you, and it makes you that great person that you have inside. It brings that person out and develops you into the great person you want to be.
Well said. So who is the most successful real estate investor or developer and why? It could be somebody you know personally, publicly, dead or alive. You don't have to name the person's name if it's somebody who prefers to remain anonymous. But the important aspect of this question is why you believe they're successful.
There's a friend of mine that when I first met him, I thought he was a jerk. And I eventually realized that that's just his crusty exterior. He's the nicest guy in the world. He'll help anybody. He's like a big teddy bear. And his name's Steve Lloyd. And Steve is an incredibly successful investor. He doesn't understand the word fail. He believes whatever he does, he's going to be successful at. In fact, he believes everything he does, he is very, very good at. He owns a ton of property in Philadelphia. He owns a lot of property in the Temple University area. And he makes money hand over fist in real estate because he's done it the right way. He's an incredibly successful investor. He's an incredibly successful investor in real estate notes. He's got the right mindset. And I think he just knows what he wants and he goes after it. And he puts the right team of people around himself in order to accomplish his goals. Nice.
Yeah, I know Steve. I've known Steve for quite a number of years. What's he up to these days? Have you seen him recently?
I see him all the time. He's got a couple of different businesses he's got going. He is invested in the secondary note market, and he raises private funds to invest in that. He uses what we call, of course, you've heard, other people's money.
That is Steve Lloyd's game, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 or 3 life-changing books, either real estate, business, or mindset and success related.
All right, the first book, I mentioned it earlier, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That book changed my life. I've got to think that pretty much everyone on this call has read that book. If you have, move on to the next one, which is the Cash Flow Quadrant, and read that book. It's kind of like a textbook, but read that book cover to cover because it really teaches your mind how money works. And if you understand how money works, then you can leverage money to work on your behalf. So that book was probably the first book that really changed my direction. It was like almost like I was going down the path in one way, and it was almost like I got hit by a car in a good way and got knocked onto a new path and saw different things in life, saw something that I never even knew existed. So those two books are really, really good books to read if you haven't done so. The other book that really changed my thinking is a book by John Maxwell, and he's the leading authority on leadership. And he wrote a book called Failing Forward. And that book is really important, I think, for everyone to read, because what he does is he outlines the fact that in order to move forward, in order to be successful in life, you've got to be able to move through failure. We're going to have failure in life no matter what. There's nothing you can do in life that you're not going to fail at before you're successful, or that you're not going to have failures along the way with before you can be successful. And he outlines all the greatest successful people in history and talks about the failures that they had along the way that we just don't know about, because we talk about their successes, but we never talk about their failures. And we've got to embrace the fact that we will fail at things, and that's okay. Accept those challenges I said earlier and move forward anyway. The only way to move forward is by embracing the fact that you're going to fail along the way. And that's the only way to be successful. If you're afraid of failure, you'll sit in inaction for the rest of your life, because you will fear that you'll fail at something. So you'll stay in the same place. And that's why most people don't take action, because they're fearing that failure that you've got to go through anyway. Believe the fact that anyone who's ever been successful has failed. It's hard for people to understand that and to get that feeling, because you look at them as a successful person. But they have had a lot of failures, and some of them have been massive failures along the way. Steve Jobs got booted out of Apple. That was the company he started. He got booted out, but he came back. He knew he could come back because he did it before. Don't be afraid of failure. Embrace it. That's where you learn. That's where you become the person who is going to be successful through those failures. So that's the second book. So those first two books with Robert Kiyosaki and then Failing Forward by John Maxwell, they both changed my life in an incredible manner.
Nice. And if you could share the crown jewel of wisdom with your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Wow, there are so many things I would tell myself. First of all, I'd probably kick myself in the butt, because I was a dummy at 18. I didn't know what life had to offer me, and I didn't want to listen to anybody else. I knew it all. I knew everything. I listened to no one. And it took me a long time to break down that exterior that I could learn from other people, and that their experiences were something that could teach me, and their insight was something that I could learn from. When I changed that, everything changed for me. It opened up my world. It opened up my mindset, and it helped me to become successful at a faster rate, because I was able to leverage other people too. So I would tell myself, listen more. Listen to other people and gain knowledge from the knowledge that they have. Don't be afraid of it. Get coaches. Get mentoring. Get into a mastermind group. I felt that if I needed someone else's help, that it meant that I was less of a person. But what I've learned as I got older was that you're a bigger person when you can embrace someone else's success and point at them as being successful, maybe even more successful than you. I would absolutely kick myself in the butt and say, listen more. Stop talking so much. Listen more.
All right. And how can people get more information about you? You want to share some contact information or URL?
Absolutely. The best place to get in touch with me is if you go to my website, breakdownthewall.com. That's breakdownthewall.com. And I want to give something free to everybody. It outlines a lot of what we talked about today on the call, so you can have this as some printed material. It's a free report. So if you go to breakdownthewall.com/free report, you can download. It's a 10-page ebook that talks about a lot of the things we discussed today, and you can have that at your disposal anytime you need that.
All right. Well, I thank you for giving of your time and coming on the show. I got a lot of valuable insights and mindset shifts of my own written down here. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. This is really enjoyable. I learned a lot from you, too. I really love that rock in the pond story. That meant a lot to me. That's really cool. It gave me a lot of clarity with that. I appreciate that. But you have a great show, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Sweet. Thanks, Bearj. And thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Diamond Show. Are you receiving new episode notifications? If you'd like to, you can sign up at reidiamonds.com. Thanks again for listening. Dan Breslin here. I'll catch you next time. Remember, here at the REI Diamond Show, we're dedicated to helping you increase and protect your net worth.
Thanks for listening to the REI Diamond Interview. To receive the REI Diamonds newsletter and interview monthly, sign up now at www.reidiamonds.com.